After a brutal journey across the Alps, Hannibal and his army were finally in Italy. The Roman consul, Scipio, didn't waste a second. In classic Roman style, he marched his army straight at the enemy. To fire up his own men, Hannibal staged a gladiatorial death match between some captured prisoners. He told his soldiers, "Look, we're trapped in Italy with no escape. Our only choice is to win." Scipio, on the other hand, just gave a rousing speech, telling his men the Carthaginians were weak and starving, so victory was guaranteed. The Battle of Ticinus was over almost as soon as it began. Hannibal's famous Numidian cavalry completely overwhelmed the Romans. In the chaos, Scipio was badly wounded and was only saved by his 17-year-old son, who would later become the legendary Scipio Africanus. The Romans fled, and this humiliating defeat convinced local Celtic tribes to flock to Hannibal's side, some even betraying the Romans by bringing him the heads of their former allies. Despite the loss, the Roman Senate was overconfident. They blamed the defeat on bad terrain and treacherous allies. They recalled the other consul Longus to join forces with Scipio and crush Hannibal, but the two consuls couldn't agree. Scipio, still recovering, wanted to wait, but Longus was itching for a glorious battle. Hannibal knew the Romans rotated command daily, so he decided to exploit Longus's He devised a brilliant trap. He let his men rest and have a big breakfast, then sent his cavalry to provoke the Roman camp at dawn. Longus took the bait hook, line, and sinker. He ordered his hungry, exhausted soldiers to immediately march out. To even reach the battlefield, the Romans had to wade through a freezing river. Meanwhile, Hannibal's men had warmed themselves by fires and rubbed oil on their skin for insulation. At the Battle of Trebia, the cold, starving Romans were in no shape to fight. Just as they started to break, an elite force led by Hannibal's brother ambushed them from a hidden position, completely surrounding them. It was another devastating victory for Hannibal. Back in Rome, complacency finally turned to panic. They began raising 11 new legions. Hannibal needed to march south to keep his momentum, but the two new consuls had fortified the main roads. So, Hannibal chose a third, impossible route, a 4-day march through the flooded Arno marshlands. It was hell on earth. His men waded through waist-deep, disease-filled water for days, unable to sleep. Animals died, disease spread, and even Hannibal lost an eye to a nasty infection. But it worked. He had bypassed the Roman defenses. Emerging from the swamp, Hannibal lured the reckless new consul Flaminius into a narrow pass along Lake Trasimene under the cover of a thick morning fog. Hannibal's army, hidden on the hills above, sprang the trap. The Romans were caught between the hills and the lake. 15,000 were slaughtered, including Flaminius himself. The lake, they said, ran red with Roman blood. With Hannibal just 100 miles from their city, the Romans turned to a last resort. They appointed a dictator, Fabius Maximus. Fabius realized fighting Hannibal head-on was suicide. He proposed a radical un-Roman strategy: avoid battle, harass Hannibal's supply lines, and slowly wear him down. This became known as the Fabian Strategy. It was effective, but deeply unpopular. Romans called him the delayer and a coward. Hannibal even tried to frame him by burning every farm in an area except those belonging to Fabius. When Fabius's term ended, the Senate demanded a decisive battle. They raised the largest army in Roman history. Around 80,000 men marched to a place called Cannae. Hannibal was outnumbered 2-1, but he was a master of tactics. He positioned his army so the wind would blow dust into the Romans' faces. The Romans planned to use their massive infantry to smash through Hannibal's center. Hannibal anticipated this. He arranged his weakest troops in a crescent that bulged outward. As the Romans pushed forward, the crescent slowly bent inward, drawing them deeper into a trap. Just as the Romans thought they were winning, Hannibal's superior cavalry, having defeated their Roman counterparts, circled around and attacked from the rear. The massive Roman army was completely encircled. What followed was one of the bloodiest massacres in history. In a few hours, up to 70,000 Romans were killed or captured. It estimated that 20% of Rome's entire adult male population died in a single day. Hannibal expected Rome to finally surrender. He had won a victory that should have ended the war, but he had fatally misjudged the Roman spirit. In their darkest hour, a young Scipio Africanus drew his sword and swore an oath, promising to kill any man who dared abandon Rome. Hannibal had won every battle, but he was about to learn a terrifying truth. Rome never surrenders. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button to help us in our own battle against the algorithm. And let me know in the comments, was the Fabian strategy genius or just cowardly? Thanks for watching!